The club is packed, the music is deafening, the drinks are lethal. You throw back another shot as your phone buzzes in your pocket. You fumble for it, dropping it in a puddle of cheap tequila on the bar. The screen blurs as you squint. 12:05 a.m. There's a message from your girlfriend. Block capitals. She is serious. Where the bleep are you? 3 exclamation marks. She is really serious. You gotta get back home. This is problematic. Mr. Designated Driver is over at the corner of the bar swapping spit with a girl with red hair. He was supposed to be driving your car tonight. No problem, you head to the bathroom and whip out your Rick and Morty weed pipe. Weed helps you focus while you're driving. It's science, you tell yourself. Or was it that guy on Reddit? 4chan? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Crack the lighter, burn, sizzle, inhale, exhale, rinse and repeat until the desired effect is achieved. All systems go. Wait, is this a good idea? That's what we'll find out in today's episode of The Infographics Show, where we'll look at what happens when you're drunk and stoned at the same time. There are about 220 million weed users in the world right now, more than there has ever been. About 17% of Americans say that they're partial to regular hits of cannabis. Newsweek recently reported Americans now smoke weed more than they drink alcohol, a notable increase in usage over the last 4 decades. For many Americans, this is good news. They see weed as a safer alternative to alcohol. Still, 62% of U.S. adults drink alcohol. Around 29 million suffer from alcohol abuse disorder. There are about 178,000 alcohol-related deaths in the U.S. each year, 120,000 males and 59,000 females, as well as 4 to 5 million alcohol-related ER visits. Mixing weed with booze won't put extra stress on your organs. In fact, a recent study suggests that compounds found in cannabis may be able to reduce the amount of liver damage caused by excessive alcohol consumption. Get in, we hear you scream. That's absolutely brilliant news for all you stoners and boozers out there. But it's the psychological and neurological impact that is the concern, not the wear and tear on your booze-addled organs. As all you weed smokers know, once you're stoned, properly stoned, your coordination isn't quite as good. Your reaction time is affected. The more you smoke, the worse this gets. A recent meta-analysis found acute cannabis use was associated with slower reaction time. Another said cannabis use has been shown to impair cognitive functions on a number of levels. Those levels include the ability to plan, organize, solve problems, make decisions, remember, and control emotions and behavior. Okay, so what about booze? We probably don't need to tell you that after a skinful of hooch, all those complex executive functions don't work as well. Sometimes you're about as reckless as an escaped chimpanzee with emotional issues withdrawing from Xanax. As all you drinkers know, a glass or 10 of beer lowers inhibitions. Alcohol affects the cerebral cortex in your brain, essentially giving you less reasoning capabilities. Simply put, in high amounts, it makes you stupid and reckless. Now, ask yourself, what could possibly go wrong when you mix these 2 drugs together? Drugs that both profoundly affect cognitive functions. So, you're revving up your car engine, the alcohol making you feel like the world is made out of cushions and cotton candy. And the weed, what is the weed doing now that it's in the mix? A study on the matter said most alcohol and cannabis co-users have used these 2 substances simultaneously so that their effects overlapped. The results were problematic. They enhanced each other. In a study in 2001, people were actually paid to drink alcohol and smoke some weed. There were 9.4 million applicants to this study. Just kidding. The participants first drank the equivalent of 2 shots and followed it up with cannabis. Other participants had weed but no booze. In the subjects who had the deluxe combo, THC levels were almost double that of the people who had no alcohol. So, weed after alcohol makes you more stoned. But we didn't need to tell you that. Another study showed that THC levels didn't change quite as much, but what's important here is that in every study, cognitive functioning was negatively affected when people mixed weed and alcohol. In a different study, participants had weed before alcohol. It delayed their feeling of drunkenness, or at least it seemed to. It might have even slowed down how fast their blood absorbed the alcohol, but again, their brains weren't working as well as they could have been. Who out there has said those infamous words, "It's not working"? Sometimes a delay can mean you do more, and later, the proverbial hits the fan with a vengeance. One of the effects of this mix happens to our working memory, which is understood to be important for safe driving. In about 25% of U.S. traffic fatalities, the drivers were under the influence of alcohol. In 2022, 37 people a day died in alcohol-impaired driving accidents. From 2000 to 2018, the percentage of U.S. crash deaths involving cannabis went up from 9% to just over 21%. And from 2010 to 2021, marijuana-related traffic accidents that involved an ER visit increased by a whopping 475%. But as you know, many people smoke and drink at the same time. Studies revealed that deadly car crashes involving both cannabis and alcohol consumption had more than doubled in the U.S. over the past 20 years. Of the 25% of drunk driving fatalities, said another study, many involve drivers who test positive for cannabis. In short, driving on just one of these drugs is bad, but taking both means you're an even worse driver. Do you need more proof? We have it. Researchers in the Netherlands did the riskiest study ever. They got participants high, and then rather than put them in a simulator, they said, "Go son, fly like the wind," sending them off down the public highway. A scientist pointed out that you would never get approval for this in the US, but if you really want to know how a stoned person drives, you have to do the real thing. The results were scary. 16 tests had to be shut down for safety reasons. It turns out driving while baked is a bad idea. Shocking, right? The car cameras caught it all. After 40 minutes, sober drivers were cruising while the stoned ones, not so much. They were probably looking for the Mickey D's drive-thru. 4 hours later, once the high wore off, they finally figured out how to keep the car between the lines. This has been tested in simulations with weed and alcohol, but never on the actual roads. In one study, 80 people were given varying amounts of alcohol and weed. Unsurprisingly, participants drove worse when high and drunk. People who smoked weed without booze had lower levels of THC in their blood plasma than people who had both. So again, it seems alcohol increases how stoned you are. There is good news for people who take CBD with little or no THC. In this test, CBD alone did not affect driving performance. As for real-life consequences of driving after a weed-alcohol combination, we could have picked many cases. A terrifying example is a crash in 2009 in New York State that killed 8 people, including several children. Diane Schuler, 36, the driver, also died. ABC News said she had at least 10 drinks and smoked a large amount of marijuana before driving 5 children the wrong way down a highway and crashing head-on into an SUV. Okay, so we think we've driven this point home. Insensitive pun intended. Driving under the influence of booze and weed will affect your performance more than if you just had one or the other. The bad news is it seems that people don't care. According to Scientific American, people who used pot and alcohol were about twice as likely to drive drunk than those who just drank. Maybe they saw that post on 4chan. Back to you and your scenario. One of the reasons you considered driving might be that mixing weed with booze has been shown to increase sensation-seeking behavior. People can become more reckless when they crossfade. People tend to overdo it when they mix. In a 2017 study, it was shown that when people smoked weed and drank booze, they tended to do more of both. Let's say you didn't drive home after that night at the bar, but you got back by taxi. Your blood alcohol level reading said 8 bottles of Bud, 5 Jaeger bombs, and a few flaming Sambuca shots, one that burnt your lip. When you were safely in your bedroom, you decided to watch Wizard of Oz with Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon soundtrack. Then you hit that bong like it was an oxygen mask in a plummeting plane. Uh-oh. Suddenly the room starts spinning around you. You close your eyes and it just gets worse, like you're standing inside the rings of Saturn. This is vertigo. You try standing, but those Jaeger bombs are ready to redecorate your walls. There's a scientific explanation for this known as the buoyancy hypothesis. Basically, booze wrecks your body's GPS. You feel clammy and cold, you start to sweat, those shots are coming out no matter what, and they do all over your loyal pet poodle. The booze and the weed together have caused what we sometimes call a greenout, or in the UK, a whitey. All that THC you've had has overstimulated your CB1 receptors. That might not mean much to you, but booze can make the effects of weed more pronounced. So there is much more of a chance of a whitey and the spins when you mix those two drugs. Studies have shown that both these drugs taken together can also worsen memory loss and blackouts. So the next morning, you look at your vomit-covered dog and you don't remember what happened. Naughty boy, you think. He must have been eating garbage again. Thank God you got home safe. You call your friend, the one from the bar. You've forgotten all about that red-haired girl. He's still with her. He tells you he's worried. Last night, they had unprotected sex. Like you, he had weed and booze when he got home, and he too had some cognitive function issues. he engaged in more risky behavior. At least he and the girl had fun. Researchers have said in studies that weed, when taken by itself, wasn't related to dating abuse, but alcohol absolutely was. The researchers added drinking alcohol and using marijuana together was associated with twice the odds of perpetrating dating abuse. Again, this is all about a lack of control and taking risks. In another study, alcohol and marijuana co-use were associated with an increased likelihood of intimate partner aggression perpetration. You might be thinking, but weed calms me down, not makes me angry. That might be true. Another study on the matter said alcohol intoxication increased subjective aggression, whereas cannabis decreased the subjective aggression following aggression exposure. Considering 40% of all the U.S.'s violent crimes involve alcohol, this is a big issue. But from what we can see, the data on violence perpetrated by people who've crossfaded is contradictory. What you really have to worry about is the enhanced stupidity and being just too high. Taking risks and puking out your guts are the two things you have to watch out for when you mix the green with the hooch. And that is not to be taken lightly. Now you need to watch 50 insane facts about weed, or have a look at this.